Apologies for opening this video with a live-action Jumba jump scare. It may have gotten the point across, but statistically at least 2 people watching this video just went into cardiac arrest, and I felt guilty about that. But anyway, yeah, just when there was a slim chance that Disney live-action remakes were gonna go out of fashion after Snow White, I don't know, existed, Lilo and Stitch comes swooping in with the steel chair and is looking to completely ravage the box office in the coming weeks, which isn't a surprise when you consider the fact that Stitch is the closest thing Disney has to Mickey Mouse at this point, and the fact they pulled out so hard on the marketing. But it's definitely depressing that this film is single-handedly going to save the future of these live-action remakes. If the film somehow bombs after this video comes out, then take it as a sign from God. Anyway, I love Lilo and Stitch. I grew up with this film and it's one of my favorite Disney films ever. It's iconic, it's funny, it's very sweet, and even though it was likely unintentional, I always believed the fanfare of Lilo being autistic, and for that fact alone, the film meant a lot to me as a kid, and I know I'm not alone in thinking that. You've all seen Lilo and Stitch, you all know why this movie is a classic, and I rewatched it just before going to see this movie so that it was perfectly fresh in my mind and I was able to mentally compare it to the utter abomination I was about to witness. That's a pro tip for any of you interested in watching this movie, by the way. Rewatch the original Lilo and Stitch in full and then go and watch the remake and you will be genuinely astounded at how badly it screws up everything. Yeah, jumping the gun a little bit here. Fuck this movie. The Lilo and Stitch live action remake is shockingly bad, and I've seen a lot of people saying this is one of the better Disney live action remakes in recent memory for some reason, and I just respectfully disagree. This is easily one of the worst, at least to me anyway. It may be biased talking because, again, I grew up with the original movie and love it to pieces, but I do not believe this is a faithful remake in the slightest. This is why I recommend you watch the original Lilo and Stitch before the remake, because these Disney live-action remakes love banking on your nostalgia, and it's what carries them with general audiences who don't remember much of the original movies other than what they watched during their childhood. Because while the plot hits the same beats and features most of the same characters, it completely fumbles the fundamentals, does everything worse, and at the very end completely misses the entire point of this story just for the sake of being different from the original. So let's begin. There will be spoilers in this video, mind, and I know what you're thinking. Spoilers for Lilo and Stitch, get out of here. But there are some changes made to the original here, and also you would not believe how many people genuinely get upset when I don't give a spoiler warning, so here you go. Not like you care much anyway. Okay, I'll get some nice things out of the way in order to push my agenda of me not being a miserable bastard who hates fun. Chris Sanders still sounds great as Stitch, no complaints there, and Stitch himself actually looks really good. I was initially a bit concerned of how Stitch would look and how there would be a very strong possibility he would fall into the uncanny valley, but he's just as adorable in this movie as he's always been, and they were clearly able to cut loose a bit of the animation compared to other Disney remakes to try to keep things looking painfully realistic. Stitch, naturally being an alien, has allowed him to retain his cartoony design and all the antics that come with that, so I think it works pretty great. Stitch is the only good part of this movie, big shocker. Can I kick this movie's ass now? I'm not gonna go too in depth of how much of a blatant visual downgrade this movie is compared to the original because it always goes without saying with these remakes, but I'm just gonna acknowledge it here because there are so many iconic moments in the original film that are just butchered by how bland and boring the colors and cinematography are. The surfing scene genuinely got gutted, and that's my favorite scene in the whole film, so yeah, I wasn't very happy about that. Okay, I'm gonna actually start with a pretty civil complaint. I think a lot of us are thinking the same thing, so, dear Disney, please stop trying to make everything Marvel. The dialogue in this movie is arguably some of the laziest attempts at writing Whedonisms I have ever seen. It's MCU dialogue from Blue Peter. I am sick of watching a movie and quickly coming to the realization that every motherfucker on screen is talking like Tony Stark. Alright, with that out of the way, generally the movie sticks to the plot of the original but just does things way worse. It feels significantly dumbed down and tamer compared to the original. You know, if the fact that they added 2 fart jokes to the script wasn't enough proof. I mean, not to sound too whiny, but there is not only an Uptown Funk needle drop in this official Disney movie released in big 2025, but it also continues the universally beloved movie tradition of having a screaming goat gag, you know, like nearly every family movie released in the last 10 years. It's actually just embarrassing at this point. I don't know what coalition of 45-year-old men is putting these in movies. I genuinely don't know how this gag keeps sneaking into so many movies. The last time goats were funny was with fucking Goat Simulator. Stitch also feels significantly tamer and more playful in the earlier parts of the film, compared to how wild and savage he was in the original, which really takes away a lot of the impact of him naturally getting tamer and more caring as the film goes on. In the original, he was scratching and tearing things apart and pushing Lilo around constantly, yet here he pretty much immediately bonds with Lilo and acts so much more playfully. The whole ugly duckling metaphor is also completely dropped, which why? That's a massive part of Stitch's arc in the original, and yeah, it was cliche, but it worked very well and was a key part of his growth from wild animal to a genuine part of Lilo's family. And I think it really sucks that this was just cut for no reason. In fact, when it comes to the characters, I think that's where the movie screws up the most, because, oh man, are there certainly some decisions being made here. There's one thing I know everyone is gonna hate about this movie, and that's how it treats Jumba and Pleakley. First of all, holy shit, there is a reason why they don't show these guys in the trailers at all. They are horrifying to look at. Like, yeah, they're visually faithful to the source material, but they look hideous in a live action setting. Oh, well, you would have complained if they look completely different, so what's the problem here? And that's a very valid point. My counter to this is that maybe they shouldn't have made the movie in the first fucking place. And second of all, even though they do look horrifying, I still would have liked to see them for more than 5 minutes. For like 70% of their screen time, they're in human disguises. And I don't mean the intentionally bad and comedic disguises they wore in the original. I mean they literally just cloak themselves and look like real, actual humans, which is just so unabashedly lame. I know the main reason why they did this is because unlike every other Disney film that gets released nowadays, this movie was given a somewhat modest budget given what they had to adapt from animation to more expensive animation that they call live action for some reason. But it just makes the film feel so soulless. The director actually wanted to include the more comedic disguises in the film, and specifically genuinely tried getting Pleakley to be put in drag again, but I guess Disney are just too afraid of Pleakley's bewitching good looks. And also, if this doesn't paint an accurate picture of how things are currently going in America right now, then I don't know what will. But this isn't the worst part. The worst part about all of this is what's done with Jumba specifically. You know how in the original, while Jumba had an antagonistic role, he was still a somewhat endearing and funny character that wasn't completely evil and helped save the day in the end, eventually becoming a big part of the family alongside Pleakley? Well, Jumba is the main fucking villain in this movie. Are you guys not ashamed?
This is low even for you!
To be frank, Jumba is just completely assassinated in this movie. He is not the same character. For one thing, his iconic Russian-sounding accent is completely gone, which takes away a lot of charm, and believe it or not, it really harms so much of his dialogue and makes him much less funny and endearing. He instead just sounds like some nerdy, evil scientist, and it just doesn't fit him. I like Zach Galifianakis, but he is completely miscast here and doesn't even attempt to make Jumba sound more like himself. And as a character, Jumba is just completely evil now and also has this weird philosophy about attachment and family, and specifically goes out of his way to destroy all of Lilo's family pictures. And the entire time I just felt kind of sick watching Jumba of all characters do this. Jumba should not be a villain, and the reason he is because Captain Gantu is nowhere to be found in this movie. Gantu was the main villain of the original Lilo and Stitch. Jumba and Pleakley were just comedic antagonistic forces who sucked at their jobs but were still decent people besides that. Trying to turn Jumba into Gantu doesn't work. It just doesn't. I get that they apparently couldn't get Gantu to work in live action because of the budget, but if you have to compromise this badly to the point that you turn one of the most lovable characters of the original into a sneering evil maniac, then what is the fucking point? I'm not against these remakes being different in some ways compared to the original, by the way. I know a lot of people will argue that there's no winning here because I think directly taking the original film and doing it in live action will just be lazy and pointless, but making changes to it is also bad, and the only argument I can give is that it should have been good. Sorry, it just should have been good. You can't change things for the sake of being different and have that be the end-all be-all. Jumba does not work as a villain, end of story, and he's not the only character that got the short end of the stick here. Stitch got most of his depth removed, as stated. Lilo's behavior is extremely toned down to make her more likable, I guess. I get some people were annoyed at how bratty Lilo was in the original, but it helped to sell the fact that she was a troubled kid, and her behavior overall helped a lot of children with autism relate to her, even though that was likely unintentional. But here it feels like they realized Lilo had become an autistic icon of some sort, so they really toned down her behavior. That's just what it feels like to me though, don't put too much stock in that. And I can still see autistic kids relating to her here, but I just don't like how overly sanitized this movie is compared to the first. Nani has also been toned down to be far less stressed out and angry at Lilo, but not much has really changed with her, except for the ending, which I'll talk about in a second. There's this new neighbor character I didn't catch the name of, who is apparently super close with Lilo and Nani to the point of basically acting as their grandmother of sorts. And not only does she pretty much do nothing interesting throughout the narrative, but she only serves to dumb the movie down further by making Nani feel much less alone and stretched thin when taking care of Lilo, since she's also the one to take Lilo to get a dog in this movie, which fundamentally doesn't work since that's what Nani wanted to do for Lilo to make her happy after overhearing her wishing for a friend in her room. David is just a dumbass now, he's completely flanderized. And then we have Cobra Bubbles, and he's just so fucking lame in this movie. In the original, Bubbles was a scary looking and demanding but well-meaning social worker who genuinely cared for Lilo's safety. He was also secretly a CIA agent who had experience dealing with aliens in the past, allegedly saved the planet one time, and had also met the Grand Councilwoman, which helped smooth things over in the film's finale. He was a very simple character, but people liked him enough. In the remake though, he's just an ultra-serious CIA agent who has never met the Grand Councilwoman, who later decides to disguise himself as a social worker just to have an opportunity to capture Stitch. He doesn't care for Lilo at all, and has to legitimately be convinced during the finale to help save her. He's also kinda split into two different characters because there's this new social worker character here, who basically fulfills all of his previous moments as a social worker with none of the harshness that made him a legitimate antagonist, and helped to increase the stakes for Lilo and Nani. Overall, I'm not happy at all with how this film treats its characters, but before we get into how the ending ruins everything, let's have a change of pace. My main problem with Lilo and Stitch 2025 is the fact that it feels like an abridged version of the original movie. I know I'm the guy who complains about pacing, I'm nearly 21 years old, I practically have one foot in the grave, I don't like when things go too fast, but fuck me, are the pacing issues evident if you watch the original movie right before this. I know the original movie wasted no time getting right to the point, but the remake somehow manages to outdo it in that regard. The film just kinda starts. It's a weird thing to describe, it just doesn't really have any finesse to it, and then the rest of the movie feels like it was made by someone just recalling all the scenes that happened and writing their fundamentals down on sticky notes. A lot of scenes from the original movie are way shorter, like the opening sequence of Stitch escaping the Galactic Federation. I was actually shocked to see that they managed to add an additional 20 minutes to the runtime somehow, because the film certainly didn't feel much longer, and it's not like the original stuff they crammed into here was paced any better either. And what definitely doesn't help how fast the movie moves is the fact that the editing just can't catch up. It does get its shit together around the halfway point, but for the first half of this movie, my god, like, you know that one scene in Bohemian Rhapsody everyone makes fun of where there's like a billion different cuts happening every 2 seconds? That's the exact issue this movie has, and it makes everything that happens super jarring. Scenes just happen with no way to connect them properly. It's below amateur work. It's an utter mess. Alright, now here's the part where I bitch about the ending. Not only is the ending insanely lame compared to the original, since Lilo and Stitch are captured together and defeat Jumba together with no help, so Bubbles, Nani, and Pleakley just kinda do nothing but drive towards them the whole time. No spaceship fight or anything. But unlike the original, where Stitch is allowed to stay with Lilo and Nani, with all of them being under the protection of the Galactic Federation, and Bubbles taking on a more parental role as he keeps an eye on them. Okay, well, all of that does still happen, but there's one major difference here that completely destroys the entire point of the movie. Nani is convinced by not only Lilo, but the useless neighbor character to leave Lilo to let her live with them and Bubbles while she leaves Hawaii to go study marine biology. What was the fucking point then? This ending really sucks. The whole point of the film was Lilo and Nani growing closer with Stitch in tow and becoming a proper family after the deaths of their parents left their family broken. Nani's main struggle throughout the whole movie is trying to keep custody of Lilo and stop her from being taken away by child services. The whole marine biology thing was mentioned like once or twice throughout the film, and now is suddenly enough for Nani to let go of Lilo. Not to mention, if the neighbor and David were going to offer to take care of Lilo anyway, then it completely removes all of the stakes. They even try to turn around the whole Ohana means family message so that she prioritizes herself and her own health, and in a way I like the idea in concept, but it completely flies in the face of the entire movie. And I don't care that she uses Jumba's portal gun to go visit Lilo whenever she wants while she's at university, because that just makes it worse. It's a pointless cop-out and a painfully lame happy ending with no compromises. The original already had a happy ending without all of these lame cop-outs. It's just... this movie is lame. I hate it. I really do genuinely hate this movie. I think the original is so much better. I am genuinely running out of things to say at this point. What it tries to copy one-to-one from the original, it does sloppily with a lazily abridged story, and the things it tries to do differently are just bad. Again, it might be my bias talking, but I consider this to be one of the worst Disney remakes by a considerable margin. I cannot stand this movie, and I'm sure plenty of families are gonna love it, and that's fine, but it just felt like this was completely designed by a committee of people who just wanted another chance to put Stitch's cute and marketable face on something to take another billion of your money. That's the end of the video. I'm out of things to say. I'm done. Go play Yakuza.